Hi, I'm Lisa from Trails Edge Astrology, and I am here today to talk about my 5 tips for working with big transits. And this could be either transits that are just, out in the universe. As I'm recording this, we are coming into a big Jupiter-Uranus transit that we're all super excited about. Or it could be a personal transit, something maybe a Saturn return or a Saturn on your moon or something like that um, that or are anticipating is going to be impactful for you, and you're trying to think about how you want to work with that. So here are my 5 tips for successfully working with transits. So my first tip is listen more than you speak. So transits coming in are really an opportunity for us to co-create with the universe. I very much believe that we are in a dialogue with our higher selves or spirit or whatever you want to call it, and that we have some ability to work together to get ourselves to our most authentic interpretation and version of ourselves. But we don't always know what that could look like. We might have some material world ideas of what we want, or we might have some, those around us might be saying, this is the way you should go, or you just societally, like, these are the things we should do. They may or may not be right for you. And so when you have a big transit coming, uh, just I encourage you to be really, really receptive, and that can look like lots of different things. So being receptive can mean that you meditate more and just see what comes up. It can mean that you pay attention to your dreams and see what kinds of flavors and interpretations come up. What's coming, um, and um, and don't be overly prescriptive about interpreting them, but just, take some notes. So that's interesting. This has been coming up. What could that mean? Or how could I live into that? You might also look for synchronicities. So oftentimes we'll see like repeating number patterns or feathers or some other like, I've seen a picture of a sunflower 14 times now in the last 3 days. Something like that. When you see things like that, so what you're seeing, the number or the sunflower, whatever it is, can be significant. But I invite you to, when you see that cue, that thing, that repeating thing, that synchronicity, log into what you're thinking about or what you're doing at the time. Because I think oftentimes the sign, that synchronistic sign, is more about what you're doing in that moment, is more the universe saying, yeah, more of this than about um, than about whatever the symbol is. So just tune in and take note of what you're thinking about, what you're doing in that moment when you see that synchronicity. So lots of yin ways of hearing. Check in with your gut. Like, how does your body feel about something? Sometimes, when 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 I'm when a transit is coming, I will have this like longing in my heart that it's really quiet. Like I can bowl over it if I don't pay attention. But just this little voice saying, what about this? What about this thing you never thought was possible? So that's my first tip for working with big transits. Be super receptive. Tune in to what you're really feeling and see some of those signs going on, and see what that looks like. Take note of it. The second tip is don't be too prescriptive. So sometimes a transit is coming in and we're like, this is what I want. This is how I'm going to get it. You know, this is it. These are the parameters. And showing up, Tosha Silver calls it showing up with your laundry or with your shopping list for the universe. And sometimes we can do that. Certainly, we're all about affirmations and law of attraction and all those kinds of things. And do with those tools as you wish. Um, but I invite you during a big transit. I think it's more successful during a big transit if you're not too prescriptive. You can have a wish. You can speak it to the universe. I would like this. The archetypes seem set up appropriately. I want to go in this direction. But leave it open. it doesn't necessarily need to be like these things, or I don't necessarily need to do it in this way. Because when you're too prescriptive about it, sometimes you can close doors for transits before they're even open, before you even know they're a possibility. Sometimes we don't have the bigger picture, I guess is what I'm saying. And so don't assume that um, that there are definite parameters that have to happen. Just again, be fluid, be open in that space. Number three, stay curious and open. Uh, because we only have our limited view in these bodies living this human experience. Sometimes there are opportunities coming that we can't even imagine. And so when you've got a big transit coming, when big energy is coming in, it's so vital to be open and curious. Any of you who have listened to me for any length of time know that I came to be an astrologer by through a real dark night of the soul. I was in a career that I thought I would spend the rest of my life doing, and it imploded in in every possible way, and and it was devastating. And I fought for a long time to hold on to it, and I got where I needed to go, I think. But when things didn't start to move, the doors didn't start to open until I started to get curious. Okay, like this is closed. I don't know where I'm going, but what if I try this? This is kind of interesting. And I just went down that path. And I never would have gotten here if I hadn't um, been able to stay open and curious. And it was a hard fought. I'm not saying it's easy to get to that place, particularly with a big transit, which was what I was going through. Was a big um, I Pluto was approaching my Capricorn sun, and so that's like ego death, if you will. Um, but it's also ego rebirth, and that curiosity and openness was a really big part of me finding where I feel like I was meant to be and what I was meant to be doing. So, big transit's coming. Don't be too prescriptive, and just be open and curious. What looks interesting? It doesn't have to necessarily, you don't have to have a plan. Just like, that webinar seems interesting, or wow, that class looks kind of cool. Just try some things. Um, Oftentimes, there's a door that you didn't know was a door because you didn't know it was a thing until you walk through. Fourth tip is do your work before, during, and after. So, if you know you have some childhood stuff you need to work on, or some inner child work you need to do, or just something that you need to fix. If your finances are kind of a wreck, if you're you know if you're just holding on to a lot of stuff because it's a pain in the neck to clean out the garage, um, any of those kinds of things that you need to tackle, I encourage you to tackle as you have energy for them, as you are able. Um, but you want to make sure that when a big transit comes, you are energetically ready to receive, that you're energetically ready to receive the highest and most authentic version of how you can live out that energy. And in order to do that, you need to do your work. You can't, um, I mentioned in the beginning, I believe we are in a co-creative process, but that means we have 50% of the responsibility to do the work. So be sure that you're showing up for yourself. Like, are you getting enough sleep? Because you probably need enough sleep if you're going to take this big step into this new adventure, and you need your cup to be full. So doing your work, make sure that you take the steps. Um, during, like, oftentimes when these kinds of transits come, a door will open, but you need to do something. You need to apply for the job, or you need to apply for the school, or you need to go to that meeting that you are like, what's going to happen, so that you can meet that person. So just making sure you do your work, and that you really show up with integrity, and honestly like step into whatever that energy can be and wherever you're feeling called to step into. You don't have to do everything. And I think oftentimes less is more with these things, but doing the work you need to do is really important so that you can be available um, for whatever your higher self, spirit, God, whatever whatever you want to call it, the universe is bringing towards you um, with the energy that's coming in. And then number 5 is give things time to unfold. So we're impatient. I'm impatient. I want things now. I want things yesterday. But with these kinds of energetics, um, oftentimes a big transit isn't the end point, it's the beginning point. It's the seeding moment. It's the time when you do meet the person you need to meet, or you read the article you needed to read in order to have this be a launching point. So it's not, sometimes things turn on a dime. They sometimes they do. Sometimes it's just like, oh, we're not going that direction anymore, or oh, well, that's done. Um, but more often than not, I have found uh, big transit energy plays out over a longer period of time, and you might see it in the moment, and you might not. That's why we stay open, we stay curious, we walk through, we follow our gut, um, and we let it unfold in right timing, in divine timing. And we don't necessarily understand that. So don't assume that a big transit is going to be like, oh, no, we're done. We're doing this. It could just be an opening point where you have to do your work and continue to stay curious and not be too prescriptive and listen more than you speak. So those are my tips for working with big transit energy. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you soon. Thanks so much.